I'm Greg Gershini. I'm the executive director here of the Energy and Environment program at the Aspen Institute. We work with people, organizations, and governments to take greater action on solving climate change. And so this is a really exciting conversation because we really get to kind of zoom in on how the energy transition can work with communities to rise together and build the things that we need to build for the future. And so I'm going to start by asking each of you to talk about yourself for a minute and what you do. And then, in the film, we see an example of a new technology, community engagement, and the right policy incentives when they're all heading in the same direction. From your perspective, how can this be replicated elsewhere, and what would it take to do that? So, David, why don't we start with you and introduce yourself? And
Wonderful. So, Dave Kluff, I'm principal of Milford High School. I've been there since 2012, and thought I'd be there for 3 to 5 years, and I think I'm going to be there for life. It's not a prison sentence. I'm there because I enjoy it. But also was able to bring my daughter with us tonight. She graduated from our school last year. But so I really love what's happening in my community right now, and I think part of what has worked well is having industry lead in there and say, how can we make a positive impact, not just for our business, but for the entire community. And so it's been very refreshing to work with Sarah and her team as they come in and try and find ways that they can make meaningful impact. And in my case, that's for our students. And we've been able to have some great success with that already. So it's been wonderful.
Excellent. Sarah, tell us a little bit more about you. We saw you featured in the film, but we'd like to maybe tell how you got into oil and gas and then how you moved into this as well.
Yeah, sure. So I studied engineering in college. I'm from Texas, as you saw in the film. I studied engineering in college, and I moved out to Rock Springs, Wyoming, where I ran frac crews in the oil field as my first job. So I spent my 20s in a hard hat and coveralls working shift work, and developed a real passion for a lot of the operational things that you saw in the film. I ran frac crews, not a drilling rig, so it is a little bit different, but my parents still have trouble with that. That's okay. And so, yeah, I think because of my oil and gas experience, I have observed the front line of communities and oil and gas meeting one another. And I often say that I've personally observed how it goes badly. I was working in Rock Springs, Wyoming, spending a lot of time in the DJ Basin, and my aunt was actually the legislative head of the Sierra Club in Denver at the same time. And we would always have these crazy battles about like fracking in the DJ Basin. And I really got to observe like how it's done really, really poorly, which is a lot of secrecy, not addressing the issues that people are concerned about, not talking to people, seeming unavailable. And here we were, a new company, very idealistic, thinking about solving climate change. And we had an opportunity to go start our community engagement out from ground zero. And I said, okay, I get to be an architect of this business and how we operate. I would love to go long before we ever start drilling wells or pulling any of equipment in town and just understand who we're going to be around and what they want and what they don't want. And is this going to be something that's welcome? Are we going to be welcome? Is there a way we can act that will be welcome and a way that we can act that won't be welcome? And I just want to see if it can be done right. And so that was kind of the intention behind everything. And we've developed an approach to interacting with the local community and anyone actually that we interact with at Fervo, that we don't want them to be surprised by what we're doing. We want to be very open, very transparent, and we've kept that going kind of as long as we've been around, which I think has been great. As to whether it's something that we can replicate, I hope that we can. I hope that we've ingrained it in Fervo's DNA, that this is the right way to do things. And oftentimes we talk to developers and they're like, when did you start talking to the community? Or like, who did you hire? Or questions like that. And it's like, oh, well, we just spent a lot of time there asking a lot of questions and being really honest and trying to build trust. And then people like Steph come along and they want to film it, and I'm like really protective, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to put any of my stakeholders up to saying anything about Fervo. Like, I don't want you telling them that they have to say anything good about Fervo. Steph will speak to this, that I was like very defensive when she reached out, because I was like, I don't know that I want to ask Principal Kluff to be on camera, because then he has to say nice things about Fervo. And what if he doesn't want to say nice things about Fervo? And I will stop talking, but I just think that Steph really, really took care of the relationships that we have built and understood. So it was nice to know that there are other people in the world who really care about people in project development. Yeah.
So every time Steph and I interact, I think Aaliyah was right when she said you're a real Renaissance person, because you're here making a film, you co-founded a solar company, you were in government, but the first time we met, you were a community organizer in a place with 4 feet of snow in New Hampshire. And so I feel like every time you're doing something different and new and exciting. So talk about yourself and how this project got started.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to our film premiere. I did start out my career as a community organizer, knocking on doors 12 hours a day.
17 years ago?
Yeah, a while ago is when we first interacted. And I worked in national security in the Middle East, and then deployed clean energy projects in India and Pakistan, and then had a moment where I'm like, why am I halfway across the world? Back home, people don't have clean energy accessibly. And so I started this community solar company with my co-founder, very amazing Sandhya, who actually flew in to be supportive. And we, after we sold the company, I left, and now I teach in a business school, climate tech commercialization. I think part of the reason why we lost so much climate policy in the last few months is because policy follows culture, and we've been losing the cultural conversation. Like, the stuff in this film I had never seen on video before, but you lived it. And there are people all across the country who live it, who develop projects and interact with communities in a respectful way, and it sees the benefit to communities. But most people in this country don't believe that clean energy is good for them. And so how do we change that cultural conversation? I think video is an important part of that, because everyone gets their news through video now. And our industry doesn't utilize video. Our industry gets really excited about the supply side dynamics. Like, we get really interested and we nerd out on how to structure project financing and the cool technology, like how do you build the technology that doesn't exist and scale it. And sometimes we forget that the whole ball game is how it affects people and communities. And so is there a world that we can do climate tech but make it more human? And so that's why we wanted to make this documentary, and we have a whole pipeline of other stories out there like this that shows that communities can get deep, meaningful benefit. And this is not a corporate puff piece. Like, the housing portion is really important because it shows that this stuff's complex. Like, you get in there with the best of intentions, and hard things happen, like everyone's rent goes up. So what do you do about that? And I love how, like, these two people, I came away from filming with them for 2 days, and I loved them and how they interact with each other and how they take care of each other. And I think those are the kinds of stories we need now. More people taking care of each other and building the better world together.
Thank you. Dave, there's a national conversation about kind of the economic promise of clean energy, but as you lead a high school, I guess, how have you seen this project change the way your students or their parents kind of think about the future of economics in your city, especially as big employers leaving, Fervo's moving in? Like, what are the impacts you've seen there?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to see that shift starting to happen, and I would say it's just starting to really open their eyes right now of what this can do. I've been in the conversations for a few years now, and hopeful that what we're seeing start to happen now is what would happen. We joke somewhat sarcastically, and it's a bit sad, the joke of, our best export that we have are our students, are our children. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to have good paying jobs, careers that keep them right there in our community. And so they leave, and as that happens, the community gentrifies, and it affects everything. But what we're seeing right now, and in the video, one of the people that was interviewed is actually an assistant coach for a few of my programs, and she's mentioned she's getting a little bit teary-eyed. One of my students just got hired for a career, not just a job, but a career that's going to allow him to stay in Milford and continue to be that next generation that helps build our community. And that really is the biggest thing for me, is that we can have opportunities for our community to stay and grow and thrive, and not just survive. And that's a big shift for us.
That's great. And especially for students to kind of have that hope that there's going to be other careers, other jobs that they can get after they graduate, or for their parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
Steph, on the same point, the economic promise, as you've been, you've been to Milford, you've been looking at other projects in the company that the two of you ran. What are these job opportunities? What are the economic kind of growth opportunities look like up close?
It looks like driving through a shuttered main street, but because a new company is coming in, businesses are opening up again. And you heard from Melissa say, I 3x'd my business in a couple of years. It also looks like just neighbors talking to one another, because trust is built over consistency. It's showing up day to day and doing the honest work. Like, this film is not possible without Sarah for many, many years, sitting in people's living rooms, asking for them to believe that she won't harm them, that she will help them, asking them the important question in the film, which is, how can we be a good partner to you? And showing up and again and again and again and earning the trust, especially in a town that's seen boom and bust.
Yes.
And so that's what this is built on. And researchers in Columbia University are tracking the amount of banned renewable energy projects across the country. And they found in just the last year, the number of statewide bans on clean energy projects has increased by 111%. And contested projects has increased by 29%. So if we don't show people the benefits, the tangible benefits, in a way that they can understand and see and trust from the voices of the people who are building the future and who are experiencing it on a local level, especially in rural areas, then we're not going to build the movement we need for the energy transition.
So Sarah, the video talked about, and the congressman also talked about geothermal as baseload, as 24/7, and there's always this tension between renewables and baseload, and geothermal is straddling those two things. I think, can you talk for a minute about how this actually works, how you drill the well, how the geothermal is actually being produced? Because I think in the policy space, we often kind of glide over the top of that and don't really drill too deep into it. Sorry, I saw that coming from a mile away.
They're impossible.
Yeah.
The puns abound. Yeah, so we have two parts of geothermal. We have heat extraction in the subsurface and power generation on the surface. The subsurface extraction piece is the piece that Fervo has innovated upon. We're using traditional power plants on the surface, and we basically drill horizontal wells. So far, geothermal has only drilled vertical wells into steam-bearing resources. We drill horizontal wells into dry, hot rock, and then we frack across them to connect those wells to create little teeny pathways. We inject cold water down injection wells. It flows across the resource, picking up heat. We pull it out of hot production wells, and then on surface, we send it through a power generation cycle. We re-inject 100% of the water into the subsurface. So that is how geothermal works, and because of that, since you mentioned, Greg, being in this town, it is a highly bipartisan solution. We are a clean energy resource, so we're producing zero emissions at surface, but we are also very reminiscent of oil and gas. And 100% of the people working in the subsurface right now on our site have previously worked in an oil and gas field. Our rig came straight from North Dakota. Our rig crew largely came from Wyoming. We have service companies every day from across Utah and various other oil and gas supply chains. So because of that, we're like a very oil and gas reminiscent group that also creates clean energy. We're creating jobs in rural America. We're selling power to people who care about clean energy. And so it is a nice, it's a nice time to be a pretty bipartisan solution.
Yeah, and you're able to employ people who may not be able to find jobs in the oil and gas sector at a certain time because of the boom and bust cycle to do those same things, and you probably, the training is probably pretty limited because of that.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, somebody from Milford, Utah, if they knew that H&P, a rig contractor, was hiring in Vernal, they might think to travel across the state and try to get hired by H&P. But I think what we've done is we've opened up the geographic reach of our oilfield service businesses. So now H&P has actually just recently hired someone from Milford because they're working in Milford and they want someone who commutes to and from Milford. So we've opened up the geography of where these companies are hiring. And then what we've done is we've just made people aware that these jobs exist. We don't require a lot of retraining. So like if somebody from Vernal, Utah gets hired by H&P, they don't require retraining to go from drilling in Vernal, Utah on the east side of the state to drilling at Fervo's site on the west side of the state. But we are trying to create training pathways from people who are not necessarily applying to oil and gas positions on their own. So we have created a micro-credential course with one of the local technical universities. We've created a geothermal apprenticeship training course through Southern Utah University, which is in Cedar City, the city to the south of the project. And we're trying to just create these educational opportunities so that people know where to go to get the training and then be hired into roles that geothermal projects actually need.
Dave, we see this coming together, like I mentioned earlier, the technology, the local leadership in Milford, and the policy alignment. What are some of the things that you see that could make projects like this easier to build in other towns like Milford that companies, whether it's Fervo or other companies doing similar things, could do more or better of to get this going a little bit faster?
I think the success we're seeing in Milford right now, I've got to give, here again, Sarah a lot of credit for what she's done of coming into the community and asking what our needs are and how they can be of help for us. So if there was one thing to replicate, that's my biggest one right there. And then just sharing that vision of how the impact, what the impact is going to be on the community, so the community can actually prep for it and then follow through. And so for me as a school leader, my biggest thing is I want to make sure that my students are taken care of, that their families are fed and they have a roof over their head and that they're doing well that way. And so when we can have industry come in and be a good partner and supply those critical resources for our families, it makes a big difference.
Sarah, you talked about the time that you spent talking to folks across the community. It takes a lot of time to build that trust. How are you thinking about this as looking at other communities, looking at building other facilities into the future of things that can help build that trust, and also things that maybe you would do differently or you would do earlier or later in the process?
I don't know. I think a lot about maybe I should have moved.
We'd have had you. We'd have taken you in a heartbeat.
Yeah, it would have been fun. Yeah, it's not like the most scalable thing. You can like press a button and scale this to the next community. I think you have to have people who care, and the company has to see it as a vital part of the project's success. And looking back now where we are, we're going to deliver power to the grid next year. And we deeply believe as a company that we would not be delivering power to the grid next year had the Milford community not facilitated all of our efforts. Like, you know, for those of you who haven't been to a community that have only, you know, 1,431 residents in it, like, we're sending hundreds of loads of semi-trucks down the main street, which is one of like 4 streets in town, okay? People live on the main street. There's like kids playing in the street on the main street because their front yard is there and they're kicking a ball into the street. And we're sending semi-trucks down at 35 miles an hour, often hundreds of loads a day. Like, if Milford wasn't game with Fervo being there, they could just shut us down so easily. And in reality, we are recognizing that that is very delicate, sending all of those loads through town, and we're trying to work on it together, and it feels very collaborative. So I think we really, really, really see this as a necessary part of project development, that unless we have community trust and strong relationships, it's not viable for us to develop a project in a community. So that will kind of be something that we have to greenlight going forward, and it's not something you can like do once and forget about. It's something that is enduring throughout the life of the project. So, you know, the way Fervo sees it is like, if I left Fervo tomorrow, this is the biggest role that I have to fill, is that I have personal relationships in the community, and I have to, you know, make sure that they feel well taken care of in the event that I ever did leave. So it's not something that's super scalable in that way.
But some of the best things in life are not
Yeah,
scalable.
exactly.
And I think we worship at the altar of scale in climate and climate tech, and we're like, how do we scale bigger, better, faster, stronger? And really, when you think about that, like, human connection doesn't scale. Like, there's like beautiful things in life that don't scale. But what does scale is replicability.
Yeah.
Like, what I hope is that people replicate what you did, and then the healing that happens at your high school, Dave, in communities across the country. Like, central, controlled scale is actually not the point of solving climate. We need replication across local environments, and people to feel like, oh, I want to do that. I aspire to do that too. And people look up to Fervo for a lot of reasons, like, you know, you raised $600 million, you're a unicorn, you have cool tech, you're building the largest next generation geothermal plant in the world. Those are all cool, but I want people to look up to Fervo because you went into communities and living rooms and said, how do we be a good partner?
So I have one more question for each of you, and then we're going to open it up to a few questions from the audience. You know, looking at this story, starting with you, Steph, this is part of a big national and, you know, COP is happening right now, international shift towards clean energy. It's slow moving. What about this experience, this project, can you not scale but extrapolate towards the, you know, towards the energy transition and how communities and companies can interact?
I think these stories are everywhere. And I think most of our media environment is just rage bait, and it does really well with clicks. And people don't want the other extreme either, which is only the positive stories. Like, the world is complex, it's hard, there are difficulty, tensions. Like, how do you build clean energy as quickly as possible while still respecting natural resources? And how do you make sure climate is enhanced by AI rather than harmed by AI, right? Like, none of these questions are easy. And I think walking that line and talking to people as intelligent adults and showing them in the voices of locals, like, all the beautiful solutions that are out there is how we get to this point of replicating these stories.
There.
I guess one thing that always strikes me when I'm here, so we're selling, this is a 500 megawatt project so far, and 100 megawatts comes online next year, and the next 400 megawatts comes online in 2028. And we're selling the majority of that power into California right now because there was a willingness to pay for the power in California at a rate that actually returns something meaningful to project finance. And when we come to the Hill and we talk to some stakeholders, they hear, oh, you're selling all of your power into California, so the community gets no benefits from the project. And I'm always like, in what world are you living in? Like, these projects are hard to build. There's a lot that's happening. We're using a lot of vendors in the local community. We're creating jobs, we're creating training programs, we're funneling people into oilfield service positions so they can go elsewhere in the state and around the country. Like, we're doing a lot of things, and I do think that people are pretty willing to get in their corner and say this is bad because of X, and they sort of fail to recognize that there is a full picture at play here. And so, you know, I feel a lot of empathy for people that they can't understand necessarily all that's gone into this project, but it is really helpful that you're sort of bringing this part of the story to light. And yeah, I feel very, very proud of what we have together built in the community.
So the thought that comes to mind, and to kind of summarize what's already been shared, is when we have great ideas that can come together that are mutually beneficial, everyone wins. And so the more we can do that, the more we can take care of each other, focus in on those relationships, and support one another, we're going to find that success. And how we do that? We do exactly what's been happening in Milford right now. And it's been a great partnership and yielding great results so far. And I can only have hope that it'll continue to yield amazing things for us in the future and for everybody involved.
Does anyone have any questions? We have a couple of mics.
Thank you all for your earnestness. I think there's a lot of humanity that's been shared on the stage today. So I want to know, from your perspective, what does it take to keep that humanity with the level of vitriol and he said, she said, and sort of anger and difficulty it is to keep clean energy bipartisan? What do you all think it takes to preserve that sort of earnest human spirit as we all, as folks in the NGO space, strive to share that message from our vantage points in DC?
I asked Dave, when I was on your farm interviewing you, because not only is he a school principal, he is a farmer. Talk about a Renaissance man. He said, did you know that horses are service animals? And I didn't. And can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think there's a nugget in here that connects to your question.
So what I shared with you was that horses are used for therapy animals frequently because they reflect energy and emotion. And so if you are projecting anger, excitement, fear, the horse will reflect the same thing. And it helps the person that's receiving the therapy become more aware of their emotions at the same time. And I think as we build those connections, that's what we're able to overcome. We're able to overcome the fear that comes out of it. We're able to overcome the uncertainty, the lack of trust. To be completely transparent, I did zero research on Steph before I sat down with an interview for her for about 5 hours that day.
Yeah, thanks for the time.
And afterwards, I did a little more research on her. I was like, this was an amazing experience. Truly, I felt like I was able to share and connect with Steph in a way that I didn't anticipate that day. And we have completely different political ideologies. And I feel like I could trust her with anything that I have to share. And I hope you would feel the same with me, you know. And I can work with people that are like that. We recently did a leadership training seminar for some of our students, and one of the themes was trust that everyone is doing their best. And I think when we can step forward with that and be honest and earnest upfront with people and have that in return, we can heal a lot of that divide.
And I mentioned that because you spend time with Dave and you see like he cares so deeply about his students. He really, really is a source of healing for troubled students in his school. And it comes from a place of just like deeply seeing and being empathetic. And that is what is missing from our politics. And if only Julio, I would like to mention that my partner in making the film, Julio, who couldn't be here tonight, is an incredible, incredible filmmaker. And both of us walked away from meeting Dave being like, God, I wish he had been my principal. I would have done so much better in high school.
Oh, that my students would feel the same.
And like, if more developers were like Sarah, then like we would have better projects, more durable projects, right? Like, so I think my point is like we need to highlight the people who are doing things well and make them examples so that other people follow them, because this is it right here. This is the answer to life's problems.
Your students will only come to that realization years later.
Yeah, definitely.
I think, trust is one of the 3 pillars of the Aspen Institute's strategic plan, and it cuts across everything we do in every program that we have here. And so it's really great to see when you sit across from someone that you can build that trust, you can build that rapport no matter what the differences are, and I think that really makes all the difference. Join me in thanking our panel.
Thanks.
Thanks.